English Teacher, Part 32. Planning lesson content. In planning your early lessons, define carefully the material that you intend to cover. Keep your lesson content simple, but remember that the content represents a broad range of learning objectives, and that as your experience increases, so will your perception of its importance and your plans for its use. To help your students reach the learning goals you have planned, you must always choose content that is meaningful and logically organized. Consider your students' development levels and remember that the content should challenge but not frustrate the learners. Identify prerequisite learnings. Review your lesson objectives to identify all the prerequisite learnings, prior knowledge or skills that your students must have in order to learn the content you are planning to teach. If you do not know whether your students already have this knowledge or these skills, you should use some form of inquiry or pre-test to determine your how basic your lesson introduction should be. This is important since you can lead your students into further knowledge or skills only by beginning at the point where they are, not at the point where they are supposed to be. Set level of the student's performance. To meet your professional development targets, you will need to describe your student's degree of success, that is, the level of performance in meeting the learning objective sets. The key to describing performance successfully is to use verbs that express observable actions. Verbs such as understand, know, comprehend, learn, remember, evaluate, feel, value, appreciate do not describe the observable action. By contrast, verbs such as list, name, select, write, draw, outline, match, announce, solve, and form record performance that is easy to observe and evaluate. Set conditions of students' performance. Part of the establishing objective is determining the conditions under which your students will perform. Conditions relate to the circumstances governing students and to the nature of the material students use when they perform the procedures prescribed for attaining the objectives. Think out of the conditions and context associated with your lesson objectives. Under what circumstances is the objective to be performed? The answer to this question often relates to the information and materials that you will provide for your students. For example, one of the example 3.1 focuses on the conditions of meeting objectives. We can have certain exercises on them, and those exercises will let you know a lot about them. There can be practices and there can be projects. And next we have the conditions of meeting objectives. Students will serve tennis ball into the serving area 6 times out of 10 using the American twist style and without presence of receiving player. Conditions. Setting the scene. Once you have planned your lesson objectives and content, you should consider a number of practical factors that will help you to deliver the content smoothly and your students to achieve the learning objectives you have identified. Selecting teaching aids. As an addendum to your lesson plan, you should list the teaching or demonstrating aids, for example, overhead or a movie projector, charts, models, maps, texts, and student learning materials that you plan calls for you.